Hello, I am in endeavor to do a new video. Um, how are you guys doing? I've had an emotionally taxing day. I'm showing you my Doctor Strange shirt. This is from a blacklight poster from the swinging 60s. I guess that were hung in dorm rooms or head shops or something. And it doesn't really work with black light, though, this shirt. But it's Dan Adkins art, by the way. Great artist. Um, so Uh, I did a couple of personal videos that were kind of like the soul bearing variety, and I decided they're just too much soul being bared and too much discussing of other people, and I'll respect their privacy, even though I didn't name any names. I just, stuff's kind of fresh, and the wounds are fresh, and any time to take over and scab up. So I'm talking about music. Might go all over the map with this, though. I don't have any particular thesis on one musician or band or one particular kind of music, but I will talk about a few different kinds of music, stuff I've been listening to, stuff I recommend, anecdotes if I know any. But I just had to do something creative, or, I just basically had to do a video to kind of keep my sanity tonight. And I was looking pretty good, and the lighting was kind of cool, so I'm like, yes, let's do this, all right? Um, right now, I'm listening to Messer Chups, which I've talked about a bit on my last on music, and this album's called Zombie Shopping that I'm listening to. My good friend Stephen Levin got me interested in this group. They're described as a experimental abstract surf guitar band. They're from St. Petersburg, Russia, and they were founded by this guy named Guitarican. I don't think that's his real last name. Oleg Guitarican. I think Oleg's his first name. His partner was named Oleg too. The two of them had a band. There was originally a band called. I'm trying to recall the actual name of the band. It was kind of a German name. I'm gonna look it up here so I get this correct. Yeah, Oleg Guitarkin, Messer for Frau Müller. So that sounds German. Anyway, uh, these guys in 2000 did a project Messer Chups, and it was kind of synthesizer, bass guitar, and some guitar, of course. A lot of synthesizer, a lot more abstract. I listened to their first full-length album, something Libido, Miss Libido, is that the name of it? Miss Libido, yeah, 2000, and it was a little bit more avant-garde, looser, kind of a little more on the Man or Astro Man side of things. They're more experimental stuff, with a lot of surf guitar and a lot of spacey sounds. And these are like horror themed albums, generally horror and kitsch. So as this group progressed, they eventually solidified into a permanent partnership in 2005 between Guitarkin and this woman who goes by the name of Zombie Girl. I think her real name is Svetlana Nageva, and she plays bass. She's an incredible bass player, and she's got the kind of Betty Page glamour look. Excuse me, I'm not bored. I'm just really tired. I need oxygen. So they kind of became a trio from then. They had a drummer too. They kind of went more straight up surf guitar, but still did a lot of kind of weird things, but mostly like a lot of samples from horror movies and strange spoken word parts. there was kind of a period in between that two Oleg lineup and the Zombie Girl lineup where they were doing a good bit of theremin, good bit of stuff on the theremin. First album that really appealed to me, I've listened to most of them now. Vamp Babes, 2000 is incredible. Crazy Price, 2003 is pretty good. Heretic Channel was the first one I heard, 2009. Zombie Shopping I'm listening to now, that's 2007. This is probably my favorite one. But yeah, Bermuda 66 is pretty good. Church of Reverb is excellent. Great guitar work and just really nice atmosphere, moods. Really kind of wide open, spacious. You know, the music has room to breathe, basically. And they've done a handful since then, and I'm kind of working my way through them. And I believe you've got a brand new studio album on YouTube. It's not even on their Wikipedia page yet. I forgot the name of it, but I'm working my way up to it. I talked about them quite a bit in my last video, so I think it'd be good to talk about some that I really maybe haven't talked about as much. So go through a few of these that I've found interesting this week. We'll scroll up here. As always, I'm listening to Biosphere, which is this ambient, I think it's one guy. I haven't done a lot of research yet on this group. But they've been doing albums since the 1990s. Excuse me. And the early ones are kind of chill electronica, ambient, industrial. I mean, there's rhythm and there's vocals and there's more of that kind of electronica from that period. But they evolved into something somewhat different, and actually I prefer their other albums. The first two are kind of in the vein I just alluded to, but then they did a whole incredible series of albums. And with those, they kind of basically any kind of ambient mood. I mean, a lot of synthesizer stuff, and then some nature sounds, found sounds, a lot of trance-inducing kind of things, hypnotic, repetitive kind of stuff. The ones that I liked the most, if I can find them on here, here we go. These are some ones that I've liked the most. Substrata, Shinzu, Departed Glories, Autour de la Lune, Drop Sund, and one Biosphere paired with Death Prod called Stator, which was the first one I really got into. All of those I would recommend. There's also one called Microgravity I've been getting into. It's one of the earlier ones, and I guess it's when they kind of started making the transition into more purely ambient work. Yeah, so those are two guys I've already talked about, I think, but I'm kind of going a little more depth this time. On the surf guitar thing, I'm listening to some early Link Wray. There's a couple of 1958 albums of him from the Cadence Sessions, and I assume that's the record label, and they're incredible. Very heavy guitar for 1958, lots of distortion and fuzz. I mean, the people who kind of tend to take credit for distortion being so influential and prevalent in rock music, a lot of people who take credit are people who assign credit, like, say, Rolling Stone and these old guard critics used to, make comments like the Rolling Stone song, Satisfaction was an early pioneer, but, the Shadows were doing that stuff a few years before, in Britain, and then in America, a few years before that, Link Wray and Dick Dale were doing it. And Link Wray was taking a lot of those sounds about as far as they'll go. I like to try to find more of his original LPs and more that are solely instrumental. Some of the Dick Dale stuff that I have found is really good, but some of it's a little uneven. I'm trying to maybe find some compilations. I used to have some Rhino CD compilations of Dick Dale and of Link Wray. The Link Wray one was called Rumble, but I don't think it's here as a whole album. I think it's like a playlist, but the ones that I got really are better. They're really original, the original stuff. Going further back as the week went on, basically I was exploring a whole ton of different ambient and surf albums. There's one thing called the Higher Intelligence Agency, and I don't really know their origin as of yet, but assuming they're one person or a band, apparently they've been recording maybe since the late 80s, early 90s. One of the early albums that I got into is called Color Form from 1993. And they've worked with other musicians, did an album with Biosphere called Polar Sequences in 1996. And they also did some work with Pete Namlook, who I kind of raved about in one of my last videos as kind of a ambient titan that I just kind of really gotten hip to. I'd never heard of him until not long ago. I'm still exploring some Tortoise. They don't have a lot of studio albums, but they're credited with being one of the important early post-rock groups of mining that vein of style, of sound, etc. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the post-rock I've heard it's post-rock because it's rock in the sense that it's electric guitar that's not bluesy or jazzy, occasionally jazzy a little, and drums, which are usually very straightforward, powerful, usually a heavy snare. But those are the qualities. In other words, that kind of skeleton of rock, but then within it, there's all these atmospheres and textures and long jams, but more based around feeling and ideas than cliched riffs or the band jamming out, like jam bands. This is more like I guess in its day in the old days it would have been real psychedelic music, but now it's post rock. It's similar to atmospheric black metal. It's where you're basically taking the music wherever you want to take it, and you can go switch from riff to riff and lead to lead, and the stuff with no vocals is really the best, because it's kind of like it's a mood, it's an atmosphere. There's a heavy stoner rock group that some of you guys might be familiar with called Earth, and the main guy in Earth used to be great friends with the late Kurt Cobain, and in recent years he kind of refined what he was doing into this kind of post-metal, desert metal, stoner rock metal, ambient, where he's kind of, it's very heavy, but it's like it's very slow riffs. It's like you're out in the desert and you're dying and need water, and you're slowly dying. But he has one called The Bees Made Honey in, oh, that's going to drive me crazy. The Bees Made Honey, let's look it up, because I don't want to mess it up. Such a great title. I've got it downloaded. The Bees Made Honey and the Lion's Skull. That to me is a masterpiece of stoner rock idiom, and to me it fits in with the same kind of idea. I mean, the riffs are more predictable. They're more like traditional metal riffs and stoner rock riffs, and doom rock, but they're really slow. I mean, I don't mean slow, grindy like St. Vitus. I mean, they're slow and atmospheric. The drums are minimalist. The bass is minimalist. Just the sound, the drawing out of the chords and the distortion and the sustain and the decay as the sound uh, ebbs into the air. It's beautiful. So that's another one I recommend. The Bees Made Honey and the Lion's Skull. But a lot of you guys may have already heard that. I don't really know. As far as Tortoise goes, as far as recommending a particular one, uh, the one that I like, the first one is really good, but the one I like, I've gotten into the most is TNT. Um, and that album, one of their first albums. I'm not sure of the exact year of all of these. They also have an EP called Gamera, as in the giant kaiju turtle. I haven't listened to that yet, but I've always heard it's really good. And they have one called Standards that's really neat. But there's one. Uh, there's a couple of recent ones. I think there's one called. Was one called "It's All Around You" that's fairly recent, and I've not listened to that one. And then, of course, there are millions there are millions living that will never die. I think that's their second album from the '90s, and that was kind of their break and a real influential album on post rock. Um, but there's another one they have that's got an interesting title. If I could find it, it's called. I'm gonna try to find it. So I've got a lot of these up, and then a lot of them I don't have up. So this one is called "Millions Now Living Will Never Die." I mentioned that. That's from 1996. "Beacons of Ancestorship" from 2009. I really liked this one. I liked the sound. Their stuff is really clean and wide open. And like I said, it goes in all kinds of different directions. It's very experimental, but you still have that kind of vibe. And there's a couple of channels on YouTube. World Has Post Rock, and there's another one with post rock in the title. My mind is failing me today, but there's two great channels. World Has Post Rock is really good, and they are, they have playlists and videos from all these different bands. Tons of them are bands no one's ever heard of, but just like the black metal scene, the post rock scene is rich and creative, and it's like a bottomless well nowadays. There's still interesting things being done with electric guitar and drums and effects. Even in this day and age, after everything's kind of been said that you think, has to be said. I will go ahead and wrap up with one more because it's one of the most unusual records I think that I've ever heard. And it could put me on the road to the topic of the atmospheric black metal, and which, like I said, I'm going to try to do a whole show on that. Some of the best stuff from the last 2-3 years, and so I want to find this album because I listened to it again the other day, and it never gets old. It's called "The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness," parts 1 and 2. So it's 2 CDs, and so it's like 2 albums, but that's the collective name of the album, and like volume 1 and volume 2. And the whole work is 1 hour and 59 minutes. It's amazing. This guy Austin Lawn, who more or less is Panopticon, he's kind of a master of string instruments. Not only is he an incredible guitar player, like electric guitar player, who's all over the fretboard with every style and every kind of effect, and the super fast arpeggios all the way up to the grinding stuff, down to really atmospheric stuff, wah wah, all kinds of insane sounds, that kind of shredding, but He also plays acoustic guitar beautifully. He plays like banjo. He plays fiddle, and his fiddle or violin is like really emotive and melodic. His work is it's very American. It's kind of rooted in, I guess, the Old West or the current West, the Midwest, the Northwest, where it's basically wilderness and parts of America that are still not spoiled by, uh, you know, being industrialized or being torn down and having a mall or condos built on. Some of the tunes, the melodies sound kind of like the music you'd almost hear in like a western, an old western, that being played like Home on the Range kind of stuff. Not that cheesy, but that kind of instrumentation. So I mean, there's some like folk and bluegrass that are real prominent in there. So a lot of he's kind of making some comments through the lyrics and the vocals about basically what I'm talking about, spoiling of the wilderness, and even the title of the album, The Scars of Man on the Once Nameless Wilderness. Like, what have we done to nature, to our world? And he seems to be advocating just kind of retreating, going into the woods and being a mountain man. And he's evoking this through the Americana style music, but also it's still atmospheric black metal because he still has the black metal parts with the extreme fast tremolo picking and blast beat drums and the gurgling vocals. But he also has some guitar stuff that's more like traditional metal that just is just some wild, amazing off the fretboard stuff. Uh, he's really a master of the stringed instruments, electric and acoustic. So sorely overlooked, underrated, underdiscussed. Austin Lunn. He's done some other albums. His first album, Panopticon, is really kind of more traditional black metal, but he did a great one called Roads to the North after the Scars, and it's over an hour long, and it's kind of similarly atmospheric, similarly conjuring up these kind of wilderness vistas. Uh, and this is kind of a cool spin because a lot of the early black metal, made in Norway and Sweden, we're talking about places that are that have a lot of wilderness and a lot of frozen and snowy areas, and you know that's kind of part of the mentality, that coldness that goes into some of the black metal vibe of the lyrics and the attitude of some of the groups. Not totally, but it plays into it with some. Some of them write whole albums, about the weather and snow, and it's really an important theme. So to do an American version uh, and adapt it to our geography is it's really fascinating. He did one called Autumn Eternal in 2015 that uh, is really a great follow up to all of these. And again, a lot of acoustic stuff, really melodic stuff going into grind and back. Anything can happen in this music. That's what I love about it. I like that in movies. You're watching the movie, and 2/3 of the way through, it turns into a totally different movie. Kind of how atmospheric black metal works. You're going along with the riff, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of a synthesizer suite, and then you're in the middle of an intimate acoustic thing, and then you're back to freaks and blast beats. And I don't know, but these guys put this stuff together expertly well. That's why I keep saying they fulfill the promise of heavy metal. But the atmospheric slash ambient slash depressive etc. vein of black metal, that stuff fulfills the promise of black metal itself. So it's taking like what Mayhem was starting to do with their progressive stuff, and especially Hard by Kernus, the infamous one. Um, his project Burzum was doing all kinds of progressive stuff that was not even really metal sounding, but he kind of drew it into the fold of what was possible in that genre. Albums like Philosophim and some of the early ones, where he does have some heavy riffs. He played all the instruments. Um, but then he's got albums that are all synthesizer. I mean, some he made while he's in prison, and I think they were almost all synthesizer. Um, his latest album, I don't remember what it was called, but it was really nice. But no matter what you think of him, pretty sure he's been banned from YouTube permanently. But no matter what you think of him, Burzum is an important band musically and a huge influence on the kind of bands that I'm talking about. And I feel like they're kind of taking that stuff somewhere else, and they all have their kind of take on it, the better groups. And they pop up all over the world. There's atmospheric black metal bands in just about every country on earth, and they each have a slightly different spin on it. So anyway, I didn't want to get that much carried into black metal, but I wanted to point out Panopticon and just make some other general comments, elaborate on a couple of the ones I'd mentioned before. Just really wanted to do a quick music video. Don't know if you got anything out of it, but I'll try to, deal with a more variety of groups and albums and maybe some more facts and anecdotes than I have this time. I'm still learning too, man. So I'm still discovering all this and sharing what I know to be true, and what I don't know, and I'm just going to say I don't know it. But I know what I like and why I like it. So stay tuned for more, and I'm glad I could get something pumped out today because it's been a day of transformation, I guess. Hopefully for the better, but through pain we learn. Take care.